So previously I had brushed the hair just to get any knots and tangles out of it. It wasn't in too bad of condition, to be perfectly honest. Then I set up the stand, put the head on top of it. The head was already covered in saran wrap and taped to make sure no water would get to it and cause mold. So I didn't have to do any of that. I then took the shoelace and pinned it over top of the lace front part of the wig, and then just tied it up at the front. Now, as previously shown in this clip, I'm parting the hair into a more side part. This is just a preference, and also it will give the loose S waves a bit of dimension. Now, with each strand that I take, I separate with the sectioning comb. I spray it religiously with water, and then I roll them up and I pin them in place with T-pins. And to make sure that they don't actually press into the hair, causing like any indents and making it look messy, I actually stick the T-pin into the lower part of the curling roll and stick it all the way into the head, avoiding any hair at all cost. And it also just makes it sturdier. I've also learnt that in order to get tangles, especially ones located near the ends of the hair, it's easier to use a backcombing brush. Yep, I am just securing that in place, and you'll notice that I'm using the orange curlers, which are tighter ones in the front pieces, which is where I'll be doing the loose waves. And then everywhere else on the head, you can see my face in the mirror, sorry. Everywhere else in the head, I'll be using the white ones that are a little bit looser, which will still give off a beautiful curl, but they will be placed into an updo. So they just need to have some shape and a little bit of curl, not too much though. Water, lots of water. And because this wig is synthetic, I am obviously not using heat on it, otherwise it will melt. So I'm doing this process instead. So once the wig is fully up in curls, I placed a plastic bag over the top of it and stuck a steamer inside and steamed it 3 times, which in all took about half an hour. And once I was done with that, mind you, I did burn myself a couple times on accident because I'm impatient. Once I was done with that, I stuck it in the towel dryer for the rest of the week. And I was very impressed with my results. You'll notice that throughout this, there are a couple of curls that I decided to redo again, just because they weren't sturdy or like being held in place enough and hair was escaping. I feel like while this definitely slowed me down a little bit, it made the end progress a lot better. Also, I should probably mention that I did start with, when I was starting with the white rollers, I started at the bottom. Always work from the top downwards, save yourself the hassle. Yeah, don't do what I did. Okay, we're cutting to the next week. I just took out the head with the curlers still in out of the towel oven. I put it back on the headstand. I took out all the curlers, as you can see, on the bench next to me. And I started brushing through the curls with a wide tooth comb brush just to loosen them up a bit. As you can see, I'm really nervous about it because I don't want the curls to come undone too much. But they took the heat and the curlers took really well, and the curls actually stayed pretty intact. The ends were a little bit frizzy, so I had to go in with some Vitapoint. Really depends on the accent with that word. But I went in just with a little bit of Vitapoint cream on the ends of the hair, just to give them some moisture back a bit. And I did this with any of the curls that kind of lost a bit of their shape. I wrapped them around my finger really tightly and then let them release themselves, and they were just refreshed and back to normal. Yeah, this was a bit of a messy part to do. I was mainly worried about this, just them coming undone and looking a little bit messy, but they actually turned out pretty good. So it's not shown in this scene, but previously Delia came up and gave me the idea of, rather than using a circular donut padding, to just use a log-shaped one that would typically be used in 1960s hairstyles. It was too long lengthways, so we just folded it over and secured the two ends together with a bobby pin or two. And then we took that padding and secured it in the middle of the head with bobby pins once again, and then started taking pieces of hair at the back and wrapping it over top just to start covering the hair. And then once the padding was completely covered, I took other pieces of hair from the back of the head and started rolling them up and curling them into certain spots to start making the appearance of a curled bun. I believe the next part that I'm going to say is also not showed in this piece, but I will happily explain it. So once the back was completely done, I just repeated the same finger curling technique throughout, and I just secured the curls in place with a mix of bobby pins and U-pins. So once I started to move on to the middle part, this part I would end up having to do a second time because it lost its structure and it started looking just messy. But the way we did it was by starting by backcombing near the roots and using a little bit of Vitapoint cream just on the top where we backcombed to make sure there was no frizz, and also near on the ends. And again, I did that same wrapping around the finger trick to refresh the curl again. I twisted the end of the hair to naturally give it some wave shape at the top. And then I started placing it in certain places and just kind of sticking it with a bobby pin just to get it to stay where it is so I can actually look at it from different angles. And once I was happy with the angle, I pinned the bobby pin a little bit, obviously a lot more discreetly. I repeated this step following the waves one way and then creating a new angle of waving on the other side of the head. The most important step with this was obviously patience and also looking at the soft waves from different angles. And then when it was finally time to move on to the front parts of the hair, for this I wanted to have like very soft waves framing the face. And originally I was not planning on having a couple of loose pieces at the front. At the end I decided to have one loose piece just to give it a bit of character. Now for the front pieces, I did the same technique as I did with the middle section. And when it came to tying the front pieces up near the back with the rest of the bun, I just twisted the row of hair a little bit when it came around the sides of the face, just to give it an interesting shape. When it came to shaping the front parts of the hair for framing purposes. Again, while still holding the hair, not yet pinning the end part in with the rest of the bun, I manipulated it certain ways to see how the shaping would look. And once I was happy with a certain shape, I took a longer pin and I stuck the opposite way that the wave was going. So if the wave was going towards the head, I would be going against it to kind of block it in position. If it was going away from the head, I would be going upwards. Again, just blocking it in its path. Then I would pin the end, and with the front pieces, I allowed the end parts to get like a little bit, I say sloppy in a textured way. I pulled out a little strand, made sure that that part was very curled and refreshed with Vitapoint cream. Then I tied my ribbon. This took a little bit of reconstructing, but I tied it in a way that I think really pulls the look together. The only thing I need to do is just cut off the excess ribbon at the bottom, and I stuck in 2 dragonfly pins. And now it's currently residing in the storage room with a net over it to just keep it safe and secure. And I'm very happy with the end result.